Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next episode of Life's Black Belts. As always, I'm your host, Eric Alders. It is my honor and privilege today to be inviting onto the podcast Mr. Danny Levin. He happens to be not only the author of a book, Mosaic, which we'll be talking about shortly, but a very interesting life journey that I hope to detail along this interview, from almost becoming an ordained rabbi in Israel to living as a monk, to working in corporate America for a multi-million-dollar corporation, and now deciding to backpack and hike around the country to meet all different types of people and cultures. I think it's an interesting life journey that you may learn something from and hopefully be inspired by. So let's welcome to the show, Mr. Danny Levin. How are you, sir? And welcome to Life's Black Belts.
Hey, Eric, such a joy to meet you finally. We had a great conversation a few weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to this moment for a long time.
It's a pleasure, and I love those like pre-calls just to make sure that there's a good energy and that the message will be right for the audience and for the show.
And somehow I made it through that.
You made it through. Yeah, it's a strict process, but no, I being in the people business that I have, teaching for so long and literally having a chance to know and work with thousands of people, you get to be a decent judge of character and feel someone's energy and try your best, not always successfully, to know if someone is sincere or if they're BSing you. And you came across very sincere and had this story that I was like, this is going to be perfect. I can't wait to see how it unfolds. So one of the places I'd like to, it's kind of like touched on briefly some of the highlights that we talked about, but I love learning a little bit more about, where you got your start, because I feel like the process through life, these memorable, significant moments help shape us for better, for worse, but eventually turn us into the people that we are today. So if you'd like to just take me back for a brief moment, let me know a little bit about what upbringing, your family life was like, where you grew up, etc.
Yeah. I grew up in an old-fashioned home where everybody loved each other, where we weren't neurotic. The only difficulty with that home was that my dad passed away when I was 13.
Oh.
And my mom died 2 years later on the same day when I was 15.
No way. On the same day?
Same day, July 4th.
May I ask how they passed?
Yeah, my dad miraculously died making love to my mom of a heart attack.
Can't go a better way, I don't think.
Except if you're the mom.
Well, not for her.
Not for her. And so my mom really died of a broken heart, but she died of breast cancer. And the doctors told us I'm almost 65. So this was 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, we've made a lot of advances. I can't believe we still haven't cured cancer, right, but we've made a lot of advances in our treatment of cancer. But then they had a thing called cobalt therapy. And so the doctor said, we're going to give this a shot. If it doesn't work, she'll be dead in 6 months. If it does work, we'll celebrate. 6 months to the day, and we didn't even tell her she had cancer. She didn't know anything. She didn't know, because the adults felt that she wouldn't be able to handle it. So she didn't know anything. But 6 months to the day that he told us that, she passed away, and that was July 4th. So
unbelievable. Now, what do you have, siblings?
I have a brother who's 4 years older than I.
Now, how did you guys handle this together? Because you're still, so you're 13, 14, 15. He's what, 19, 20 years old?
Yeah, I was 13 when my dad passed. He was 17. I was 15. He was 19. So
right. So what do you do as teenagers? I would imagine you're still healing from your father.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting because just a couple weeks ago, an old friend, and I only know he's an old friend because I remember his name from that point in time, found me on Facebook and called me. And his name, and I recollected, it was like I was seeing a movie or something, because what happened as a result of the pain of losing my mom and dad, and I'm a pretty conscious guy. I've looked at a lot of stuff in my life. But I've completely buried all of that away. And even this guy who said, don't you remember we were in this band together? And don't you remember we played every day in the schoolyard? And don't you remember and his name is a vague memory to me, but it's not, I didn't remember any of the things. He sent me a picture. I had no idea who the people were. I remembered one person because he was my best friend. but there were a picture of 8 or 9 of us kids just, engaged with each other at our bar mitzvah, and I would never have remembered even being there. I didn't have any idea who the people were. He told me one of the guys that was in that circle was Jim Cramer from MSNBC,
Right.
the money guy. I had no idea. I looked at it, I had no recollection, none of it. And so having buried that, the sad side is I lost 15 years of memory. The amazing thing that happened is I became a whole new person. I moved from Philadelphia to Kansas City because my mother's sister was in Kansas City, but it wasn't someone we knew because we grew up in a lower middle class family. Mm-hmm. And my mother's sister married a household name. And so I went from a lower middle class family to this upper class elite family in around the world, not only just around the United States. And
you have me intrigued.
Yeah, I said the name once, and my aunt got mad at me.
It's all good. Don't need to know. But so you had a complete lifestyle change.
Unbelievable. So I went from being, a struggle. My dad died with one black suit and a mountain full of debt. And so I moved from that family there, which was my family. But it was Ozzie and Harriet. Like it was,
right.
Mom came home, there were cookies on the table, milk, and we loved each other. We sat around the table, we laughed. I remember vague things about it. To an elite family. And my uncle said to me, Danny, I don't have sons. So I've been watching you. And maybe this is for the best, because what I'm seeing in you is someone who could possibly start at the bottom, work your way up to the top. But I believe if I mentor you and you start pushing a broom today, within 10 years, you'll be in my seat. And I'll mentor you so that we make sure that happens. And he said, what do you think? And I said, wow, first of all, thank you for that opportunity. Second of all, you're smarter than me. You've seen me for 3 months and you see that potential in me. I'm just a kid. I'd like to watch you for a year and see if I want to be in your seat. I'd like to see who you are and what you do and how you interact with life and what happens. Because the gift is unbelievable, the gift is unbelievable. But I don't know anything about the gift. So I want to sit with you and watch you and see how you interact. And he said, okay, do you realize that 99.9, say 9 until the end, you can't breathe anymore? And then percent of the people would have said, where's the broom? Let me get started. And I said, yeah, just our rotten luck on the point. Say until you can't breathe anymore and then say 1. And he said, yeah, but that's what I like about you. There's something in you that I see that I like, that you're not that hungry. You're not, you can do this because it's not something that everybody else would be like selling their soul for it. You're not. A year later, we had a conversation. And my conversation was basically 3 questions that I asked him. And at the end of those 3 questions, both of us knew it wasn't mine to do. And so I walked away from running $1 billion company.
Wow.
To hitchhike around the world.
Well, we definitely have to rewind just for a moment, because knowing parts of the story in a random order, I just like to connect the dots a little bit. So knowing that you became a rabbi at one point, did you grow up in a very religious household, or is that something that you gravitated towards?
My dad was Orthodox. My mom was Reform. So we grew up in a conservative Jewish family.
Okay.
I was the only kid in my neighborhood that was dying to go to Hebrew school. Like there was just something about it that intrigued me. And so I wanted to go, and they couldn't believe it that I wanted to go. And I went, and it was not what I thought it was going to be, because
Sure.
It was, but then when my parents passed away, somehow what happened to me is I started to wonder, how is it possible that a 15-year-old kid with parents who loved him and that my dad was my hero. even though he died poor, you know, you make this image of your
course.
dad is your dad. You make him into whatever. He probably wasn't so heroic, but for me, he was my hero. We would walk down in the summers, we would walk down the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and I would hold his ring finger. And people would look, and they would stop in their tracks and look at us because our shape of our body were the same. The way we walk were the same. I was a mini me before there was a mini me.
Right.
And people would just laugh and point, you know, and say, look how cute those guys are. The waddle was the same. So he was everything to me. And so it made me, the reason why I couldn't be there with my uncle and his company was I only discovered years later when I wrote The Mosaic, which was, I asked the adults where my parents were. And they said they're in this place called heaven. So I had to know where that place called heaven was. And as beautiful as the opportunity was to run $1 billion company, as much as that would have ended so much of the stress in my life around money and finances and what we could do, and as much as I would have been able to help and give charity to people that need, it wasn't my heaven. It wasn't the heaven I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I would have diverted myself there, I would have never found what I was looking for.
So is that when you decided to dive deeper after your parents had passed into religion? Because I would imagine it was a progress for you from going from a conservative household to being a potentially Orthodox rabbi. So
yeah, I actually didn't decide to dive deeper into Judaism. I took to the road, and I went to college for 2 years. I studied psychology, and I got my undergraduate degree basically in 2 years because I went to a school where I didn't have to take any electives. I went to a school called Pitzer College, which was one of the Claremont colleges. There was Harvey Mudd and Pomona and Scripps and Claremont Men's College then in Pitzer. And so I took all the psychology courses I needed because I was hungry to see if psychology would answer my question. Would it be able to tell me where my parents were and what happened and why it happened and why I felt like I did? It didn't. And so while I was there, my mentor there said, I want to start something called organizational psychology, and I want you to be my protege. I mean, you will take this. I'm getting older. I will hand this whole thing over to you. So another opportunity that would have been, unbelievable. I mean, organizational psychology, that's what I'm doing. In a lot of ways, I go into corporations and I do organizational psychology now. But then I was a hippie with hair down to my waist. And, I was like, what the heck? I'm not going to do it. There's nothing about me that's that. And I got into the practice of meditation. And I was heading out to India to go to be in India. And I was traveling around the world. And it was Yom Kippur. It was the Day of Atonement in Judaism. And I thought, I'm in Israel. Why not go to the Western Wall and sit at the wall? And I sat the whole day at the wall, fasting, praying, meditating. And as the day ended, this guy tapped me on the shoulder. And he said, in an accent that I could barely understand, because it was this Yiddish Hebrew accent, well, where are you breaking the fast? And I said, I really don't know. I just wasn't concentrating on that. He said, why don't you come to our place? And it was a seminary. It was yeshiva. And I went there and I said, the truth of the matter is I've read in this book about a holy man that was up all from 2 to 6 in the morning and liked people to visit him. And I said, I really got to go see this man. And so I walked through the hills of Jerusalem because I was leaving not the next day, but the day after. I was going to fly out to Turkey and then go over land from Turkey to India. So I went to see him to get a blessing. Long story, already way too long. He threw me out of his office. And I ended up coming back the next day saying, you can't do that. I came to you. I don't know what you're doing. I've been thinking about what you did all day long, all day. He said, well, you came to me to get a blessing. You say you've seen Israel north, south, east, and west. I don't believe you've seen anything, because if you saw it, you wouldn't be leaving tomorrow.
Huh.
So if you want to go to India, go to India. You won't see anything there either, and you'll just waste all your time. If you're interested in learning how to see, come back here tomorrow. I said, but I leave tomorrow on a plane. He said, that's why I threw you out. You don't have the flexibility. You're not willing to make changes that quickly. So I walked back and I thought, hold it. I have nobody. There's nobody waiting for me anywhere. I'm the author of my life. I'm writing my own schedule. There's no deadlines that I have. Why don't I just go back and see what he has to say? And he was like a Hasidic Rebbe that led communities. I mean, he was like a big guy that I had gotten to see, but I knew nothing. My conservative Jewish background gave me nothing to prepare me for learning with him. So he said he couldn't believe I came back. And I sat with him. And when I came in, he was sitting with 6 guys with beards longer than mine and more wise than I, way more wise. And he stood up as if he saw the Messiah. And he said, you came back? You're going to be a Jew? I said, let's not get carried away. I'm here, like, let's see where we go. So he said, I can't, you need some training before you come here. So he sent me to this other place. And he said, you'll be there for 6 months and then you'll come back. 4 days after I saw him, he passed away.
Wow.
But I was in this other place. And in this other place, I walked in the door and I said to the Rebbe there, I was sent here by this guy. And he was surprised that I was sent there by him because they were sort of conflicting tribes. And I said, what goes on here? And he hauled off and hit me as hard as he could with his left hand on my heart. And with the other hand, he put his arm around me. He said, you know why God gave us 2 hands, 2 arms? One is to slap you into shape, and the other one is to tell you we love you, and that's why it's happening. If you want to know what goes on here, we're going to pull at you from your heart. We're going to stretch it and stretch it and stretch it so that until everybody you meet feels your heart. Because that's what your capacity is. So, what do you think? I said, if you promise never to hit me again,
Nice.
I'll be here with you. And I stayed there for 5 years in an Orthodox seminary, in a Hasidic community. And I was 1 day away from being ordained. And then I said to the Rebbe, as long as I've been here, you've said to me, put everything you believe in on a shelf. Because your problems remain at the same level. As you get stronger in Judaism, you grow up like this, and what was a mountain now is a little molehill. And as you lose your faith in Judaism, what happens is those things that were a molehill now become big problems. So just put them on a shelf and come back to them when you're up here and look at them. Well, one day before I was going to be ordained, I said to him, my shelf caved in. I can't do this. I could get my ordination in your name, but it would be dishonorable to you because you and I don't believe the same thing. And so I have to go.
What was it, do you think, that made you make that life change after 5 years in?
The culmination of what I was about to do and the dignity and the integrity of my spirit to say to him, if I'm ordained in your name, and I don't follow the belief systems that you have, and I don't follow the teachings the way you've taught them to me. Like, I was an integration of a lot of different things, and I didn't feel it was righteous or fair for me to take the way I saw Judaism at that point and be ordained in his name. So I said, I just can't do it.
So I would imagine you were questioning things slightly the entire time.
The entire time. But that's where he said, put it on a shelf. Right. So things like, the place of women in Judaism, things like we are the only way, things like I couldn't believe that our seminary of our yeshiva of 1,000 people was we were the only 1,000 people in the world that knew the right thing to do.
Right.
All those things just didn't make any sense to
me. Like you just happen to be located in the perfect place on the planet. That's like geographically very lucky.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was all, as I say to people, my life has been a series of incredibly high moments and cataclysmically low periods. Because so often I wish I'd just stayed in Philadelphia. and lived 5 blocks from my parents' house and stayed with friends with the people that I grew up with. It would have been such a simple, easier life. But my life sort of rebounded me like a pinball machine all around. But I guess that's the way you score points on a pinball machine, right?
Right. So where did you go after, spending all of your time almost becoming a rabbi? Where did you go next?
My brother was part of a yoga community in California, and I came back to see him because I'd been away for 5 years. And as I was there, I started to look and I said, oh my God, this is so cool, because like I can have my spirituality quietly. I don't have to wear a uniform. Like I was dressed in the talis and
Right.
the tefillin, the yarmulke, the payas, the whole, like I was a walking advertisement for the religion that I was a part of. And the thought of not having to say a certain set of prayers that I just memorized and said quickly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? But being able to say it with my heart, God, teach me how to love you, and to just sit quietly and listen was so intoxicating to me.
Right. It felt more natural to you.
It felt more natural.
Yeah.
And
No.
so
Yeah.
I started to go to that community, and then I said, hold it. I really like what I'm doing here. I started a bookstore and coffee shop for them in San Francisco. And it was a great success and then I left, and it didn't do that well afterwards. And then I said, what I really want is I really want to see what this is like. I'm going to go into the monastery. And I went into the monastery for 10 years, and we would meditate sometimes 10 hours a day, many days, 8-10 hours a day. I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, and I would meditate until 8 in the morning, and then I would go to work and do what I needed to do. And then I would have from 12 to 2, I would meditate again for lunchtime, and then I would come home at 5 or 5:30, and I would sit and have a little bit of dinner, and then meditate until 8 again, or 9, and then go to sleep and start it all over again. And so, and I love the lack of interference in life that allowed me to fall in love with the one thing that I always just wanted to fall in love with, which is this sense of self, this sense of something greater than us. So I've always seen the world differently, and I think it really started because when my mom and dad passed away, I was looking for that place called heaven.
Now, having experience with these different spiritual teachings for meditation and Judaism, studying psychology, do you feel that you are like a merger of all of these things, or are you just trying to pull the positive from each? Like, is there a label for what you are, what you believe now, or is it a open label?
People have been wondering my whole life where the heck I'm coming from and who I too. But I think for me, the beauty of the image of the mosaic is that all of these pieces of my life came to me.
Mm-hmm.
And whether there's another part of a mosaic that has those pieces, probably not. We all have our individual mosaics made up of the pieces of our life that we most often leave behind. We say, well, I was born in Philadelphia, now I'm in Kansas City, now I'm in LA at school, now I'm in Jerusalem, Israel, now I'm in India, now I'm in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. And when we leave, we tend to leave. But what would happen if we brought all those pieces back together and created the mosaic of our life?
Right.
And that's where I sit right now. That's what the mosaic has brought me. It's brought me this whole idea that it's in every incident. It's in every moment. It's in every person that I meet.
Right. There's things to take away and learn from everything, even if they're tragic or negative situations, or something to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, before we get into the book, you're talking about, I think people listening to it, or I'm listening to, like, how much you were meditating at that period of your life, so many hours a day, and you were still finding time in there to work and have social life in there. It seems like a still a big dedication to that study.
Yeah, it was. So many people, the monastery that I was a part of was part of a yoga community monastery. And so we tried to define the monastery not like the world defines the monastery. The monastery is, and I was interesting because I was doing some work with a woman around money. and I had all the money I ever wanted, and for a period of time I couldn't find it. It was like invisible to me. And she said, "Yeah, but you call yourself a monk. What does the monk say to people? A monk, the image that you're putting out for over yourself is austere. You don't have money. You don't want money. You withdraw from the world. You don't do any of that stuff." And I said, "But that's not the monastery that I believe in. The monastery I believe in is that you love God more than anything in the world, and you bring God into everything you do in the world, because that's really the relationship that we have with everything in the world." And so instead of defining myself by what I don't have and what I don't do, I define myself by what I do. And that is that I love God in every single moment. And so the monastery that I lived in was one in which we prayed, but we didn't just pray for ourselves. We prayed for the world. We prayed with this expanded consciousness of that we are all part of the same world, and that as the tide comes in, every boat gets lifted. So the more we can uplift ourselves, every boat, and we uplift everybody, and we pray for that. And the world's in desperate need of that right now. It's been in desperate need of it for a long time. But what I ended up finding is that I had just siloed myself again. As much as I thought that I was contributing to the world and being a part of the world and working in the world, I was living in a siloed community. I was living in a siloed group of monks that I loved those guys. I mean, they were my brothers, really my brothers. But it was a siloed community. It was different. It looked different. I acted different. And really what my desire now to do is to get out into the world and just sit on street corners with people, and sit in homes with people, and just listen to what people really want to say.
Right. And now you talk about The Mosaic, which I know is the name of the book that you authored. So why don't you tell me where the inspiration for taking some of these thoughts and ideas or the story and putting it down into print? Was it something that you had thought about for a while? Was it a project that took years? Did it just come to you and then unfolded quickly? Give me a little bit of the background behind that.
I love you. You're such a good guy. Thank you for asking all these things. As you can see, I'm getting older. And so when I turned 60, I thought it'd be a good idea to leave something behind. Not that anybody will care to read it, but in the event that somebody might, I want to sort of leave my legacy in words in the event that anybody would ever find it. And so what I had seen originally was that people enter a stage where they finish doing what they've done, and then they think their life is finished. You know, we work into the world into a certain age, and then when we retire, what do we retire into? We play golf and we get ready to die. So the first book I wrote was called V2, which was version 2. What would version 2 of your life look like if you started it anew with all the knowledge that you had of version 1? How would you recreate your life now for version 2? And so that you wouldn't just retire and get old and just die. And I sent it to a friend of mine who became my muse. And she said, "Danny, this book is fabulous, but it's not your book." And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "What are you talking about? Like, did I plagiarize it somehow? Like, I don't know. I don't think I copied it from somebody." She said, No, I'm not talking about plagiarism." She said, "This is a self-help book you wrote. And you were at Hay House building a self-help company. So I understand why you would write a self-help book. But there's nothing about you that is a self-help guy. You're a storyteller. Like, you can't even answer a question without telling 10 stories. Mm-hmm. Why don't you write a story?" I said, "Oh, great. What do you think I'm going to, like, for my legacy, I'm going to write a fable?"
Right.
She said, "Exactly." And I fought her for about a minute and a half until it came into me. Like, what would that be? Like, when you tell a story, you don't teach anything. You just tell a story. And almost every time a story comes out of my lips, it isn't the story that you hear. Because your experience of your life alters my story to your story, mm-hmm. to the way you experience that story.
Right. Like art basically is perceived differently.
1,000,000,000%. Exactly. And I thought, how brilliant to tell a story that everybody could relate to in their own way. And it was interesting. I was sitting on a plane writing, and this woman sitting next to me said, "Do you mind if I ask what you're doing?" I said, "Not at all." So she said, "Well, okay, so what do you do?" I said, I'm starting to write a book." And I said, "It's interesting. It's the first chapter. Would you like to read it? I'd be interested in hearing what you say." And I looked over, and there were literally tears coming down from her eyes as she was reading it. And I thought, this is an absolute stranger. Why in the heck are you crying? So I said to her, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Well, let me tell you, first of all, the things that I don't like about it. You didn't spend any time painting the picture of who this person is. Like, I want to know, what's he look like? Is he tall? Is he have what what do his features look like?" And I said, "Okay, tell me what you think he looks like." And she said, "Well, he obviously doesn't have dark hair and dark eyes." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, because everybody I know has dark hair and dark eyes, and I've never met anybody like this." And so I said, "So imagine if I would have painted the story of a dark-haired, dark-eyed man that was now going through this experience, what would you have experienced?" She said, "I would have resisted it." I said, "So do you still think I should paint it out for you as to who it is?" Like, it's so much more interesting when you paint him out for yourself. And she said, "Yeah, I guess you're right." I said, "So why are you crying?" And this first chapter of the story is about me losing my dad. And she said, "I just lost my dad 6 months ago."
Mm.
And when I read this, it brought it all back. And it brought it back how much of the feelings are still unresolved. I said, "Tell me, it's been 45 years and I'm still very unresolved." And so there's something in a shared experience. It doesn't matter if we're rich or poor, Republican or Democrat, this side of the border or that side of the border, white, black, yellow, it doesn't matter. The shared experiences we go through are experiences we all share. No matter where we're from, no matter what we believe, no matter what religion we belong to or what color our skin. And it's those shared experiences that I want to bring the world back to, because we've grown up somehow seeing the differences that we have and highlighting the differences. Well, the beauty of a mosaic is some of the pieces just connect at the very tip, which means most of this piece and most of this piece don't have anything at all to do with each other. It's just this little point that they connect. But that little connection is enough to continue to make the mosaic intact and whole. And I just wonder why we don't live life like that.
Just to interject and not to answer the question, but I guess it's like I'm answering it because it's answering in my head, and I have a similar philosophy to you, because what I resist are labels. You mentioned, color and culture and religion and borders and all this, and I love just literally thinking about humans and how humans relate to one another. And that Martin Luther King goal that we would judge each other by our character. And even though we've overcome a lot of different racist type things, sometimes you see it shifting a different way, where now there's angry people at white people are the bad guys now. And it's like, well, you're switching one problem for another problem. It's always whatever the story of the person is. It's the first black person did this, the white person did this first female did this. And I'm like, that's cool. And I think it's great to honor that. But every time I hear a description in my head, I'm like, unless you're searching for a criminal and you're out in the hunt looking for a 6'2" whatever, it's not important to me. It's irrelevant to the story that the person's white, black, Mexican, Asian, or whatever it is. Something my father taught me is that either someone has class and is a good person, or they're not. I don't care how much money they have. I don't know. I don't care any of these things that they believe in. As long as you're a good person, you care about others, you sincerely try to help other people, you try to be the best version of yourself, admit to your mistakes, try to learn constantly. That's it. I mean, so I think that's kind of like what you're in search for, what you're trying to say. It's that unfortunately, when people put themselves into these little labels and boxes, it becomes very tribal and very team-like.
Yeah.
And when you are not on someone else's team, you're very resistant to even hearing what they have to say. So you almost have to strip those labels off just so we could talk.
So I'm in full agreement with you, or almost full agreement, you know. But
Sure.
um, but I found in growing up, I'm still trying to grow up still, but what I found in the process of growing up is it's hard for people to find their voice, and it's hard for people to say what they really want to say.
Hmm.
And in a world where I grew up in a world where there weren't that many avenues to get your voice out into the world. Over the course of time, now with the internet and with all the things that are going on, there are millions of avenues of how to get
Hmm.
out there. I mean, now
Exactly.
it went from being so little opportunity to so much opportunity, but the net result is we're still unheard. We still feel unheard. So I remember the first time that I found the people that thought like me and believed like me and my like-minded community. And I thought I died and went to heaven. I couldn't believe there were other crazy mofos out there like me that believed and acted and thought the same way I thought. And I thought, this is like ecstasy. This is like being in a cool pool in a warm, hot day. And just, the feeling of excitement of that was so incredible. And suddenly we could speak, and the collectiveness of our voices together made us have more power to say the things we wanted to say, to be heard in ways that we wanted to be heard.
Hmm.
Until I realized some years later that we had created a silo.
Hmm.
And people who thought like us, believed like us, came into the silo, and people didn't.
Right. The voice gets echoed when you're only around people that you agree with. Yeah.
Exactly. And the spaces between the silos that people have created have gotten wider and deeper. Look at the Republican and Democrat Party.
Hmm.
I mean, nobody listens to each other. We don't even let people finish a sentence. We talk over each other.
Hmm.
We already know what we want to say. We don't answer questions. We give political points.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, whichever side you're on, you do
Hmm.
it,
It's
right?
true. Hmm.
And so I started to think, what would it take to melt down those silos? And why do we have them?
Hmm.
And I realized everything in the world is a reflection of me speaking to me about me. Crazy concept. The woman that I just met a few days ago said that to me, and she encapsulated in that sentence something that I felt my whole life but couldn't say it as eloquently as she. Her name is Simran Singh. And when she said it, I just went, whoa, like, like
Light bulb.
mind bend, like, holy, how did that come to be? But if you think about it, part of the reason why I'm going on the trip is not to talk to the Ku Klux Klan to understand their hatred. It's to understand that their hatred is my hatred buried inside of me that I'm ashamed of.
Hmm.
And that I've pushed it down so hard and so far and locked it up behind so many doors that I don't even know it's there, but I can hate them for it
Hmm.
because I hate it in myself. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm ashamed by it. And I don't think I'm a racist. I don't think I'm a white supremacist. I don't think any of that, but there's something there that I haven't dealt with yet.
Sure.
Because if there wasn't, I would look at them and I would smile and I would say, tell me about what you believe, brother.
Right. Well, there's all parts of the human psyche and that we can relate to where, you view their hate and disliking them. Someone would feel very strong hearing that you dislike or hate them. Most people would agree with you. And then if
Yes,
you turn that hate to a different group, people would think that you're an evil person.
totally.
But what you're saying is that, it's still hate. You know what I mean? It's just these common things that you see that humanity could be the kindest, most generous, mammal on the planet, and also the most evil. And we all have potential for both and everything in between in us.
Yes.
And depending on the path we take, the people we surround ourselves by, the decisions that we make. So even though you look at it sometimes with anger, you have to try to understand, well, they got there somewhere from their life experiences, guided them down this path, and unfortunately echoed the darker parts of humanity.
So I have a theory of that. And I have the honor of having a 30-year-old developmentally delayed daughter. I say it's an honor now because I'm on this side of that.
Mm.
But there were thousands of times where I didn't think it was an honor. I thought it was a curse. Because my daughter can't speak like you and I speak. She can't communicate in the way we're communicating. She can't even say the simplest things to express her basic human needs. She speaks like someone who's had a stroke, and so she's very hard to understand. And over the course of time, I've grown to understand her somehow, most of the time. But there's sometimes that I don't. So when she speaks and I don't understand her, she'll say it louder, she'll scream, she'll yell. And occasionally when she yells, she pronounces things differently, and I get it. But most of the time I don't. Most of the time it's just now an escalated situation where she's yelling and I still don't understand her. Well, when she yells and I still don't understand her, she'll throw a tantrum. And that tantrum can be in a car driving someplace where she tries to grab the wheel and get mad, where she screams. We can be in a restaurant. We could be at people's houses. We could have people over to our house. We could be walking down the street. Who knows what goes on, but she goes loony because she doesn't get heard. When she talks, she screams, she tantrums, she doesn't get heard. And her fourth thing that she does is then she'll come running at me and try and attack me. She'll try and rip my shirt or bite me. This went on for 15 years, sometimes as many as 10 times a day. And most of the white hairs on my beard and my hair are a result of me so badly wanting to understand her, so badly wanting to be able to bring her peace and comfort. And I started to think, what is she doing? And the more I sat with it, the more I realized that every single person I meet goes through exactly that same pattern. When they talk and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they try and disrupt or bring chaos to a situation. When they bring chaos to a situation and it doesn't work, they try and destroy it. It could be a relationship, a doctor's reputation, it could be a company, it could be a building. And what I realized is at the heart of that is we need to understand how to listen. We don't even listen to ourselves. Our bodies do it to ourselves. Our bodies will do that same process. My body goes overweight because it wants me to hear something that I'm not listening to. My body has pain because it wants me to hear something I'm not listening to. So I said to her, Elisa, this is after 15 years of sometimes this happening 10 times a day. I guess I'm not that smart, right? I said to her, Elisa, you know how much I love you. She was in the midst of rage. Please try and tell me I can't understand your words. Try and tell it to me in another way. Can you find another way to tell me? From the pit of her rage, she got this huge smile on her face. And she said, I am, Daddy. I said, what do you mean you are? How are you doing that? And she went like this. She put her forefinger to the side of her head. And I understood from that she was putting thoughts in my head. Because when people can't speak, they have other talents that they are. And she was literally communicating to me telepathically. She was communicating through thought to me. And I had realized she was doing that. I just didn't believe it. I just didn't trust it. And I said, you little son of a gun, have you been doing that for a while? And she went, yes, Daddy. And we started laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. I thought it was 2 or 3 months we were laughing. It was probably 2 or 3 minutes. But it was that contagious laugh. When she stopped, I kept going. And when I kept going, made her laugh. And from that moment on, she's never had another tantrum. She's never had another yelling incident. She's never had another attack. Mm. We need to find the way to communicate with each other. We need to find what people are really trying to say. Because what we do is when we yell and we scream, we're just trying to get attention. When we attack and when we try and destroy, we're just trying to get attention. That isn't what we really want to say. We're trying to get your attention so that we can actually have the moment to say to each other what we really want to say. But sometimes we've gotten so caught up in the yelling and screaming and the attack and the violence and the destruction, given the chance to say what we really want to say, we forgot what that is because we don't think it's lost its meaning because nobody's listening to us anyway. We don't think it will ever have a purpose. My goal in traveling around the country or traveling around the world eventually is to say to people, if you didn't need to yell, if you didn't need to tantrum, if you didn't need to destroy, if you knew that I was sitting here just listening to you, and I'm filming you So not only am I listening to you, the world is listening to you. How would you use your voice? What is it you want to say? Because I believe in what it is you want to say, and you want to say, and you want to say, and you want to say. We will start to understand the way to solve problems that we've never understood before. And that's where I'm trying to go at. That's why I'm going on this tour that I'll start May 1st and take a year to go around America. And I'll see if I can do it. I'm 65 and my body is not in my peak, form. So I don't know if I can live the nomadic life, but if I can, I'll spend the rest of my life traveling around the world doing the same thing.
And it's a beautiful concept, and I believe the challenge is not just giving people an opportunity to talk, but trying to also allow people the patience to listen like you do. Like how that's also a problem is people just, you're hearing someone talk, they're already formulating the thing they want to say next, ignoring what you're saying because they're ready for the next point, the next thing. And that's the challenge is, for me, with the right people, I choose when and when not to have these controversial conversations that you're never supposed to talk about religion, politics, and things like that. So when I have someone around me that I know I could be open and express thoughts and ideas, some people would be offended by the mere sense of even asking questions about it. But others are a lot more open to be like, all right, well, I disagree with you, but we could still find all these levels that we agree on and that we respect one another. Because I don't know anyone on this planet that has people that agree with 100% of what you believe. So you have to accept that everyone you encounter, everyone that you love dearly, you're going to disagree with on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Are those things acceptable to you or not? And sometimes the rules that we make are these false rules that separate friends and family because of some such silly nonsense where it's like, just sit down, talk, like you said, listen to each other, hear each other out, be respectful of where they come from. And then if you leave that disagreeing still on that subject, that's fine, but agree to disagree. You don't need to get angry and yell and scream. And there's nothing productive that comes out of that.
Yeah. Just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to fight.
Exactly.
I have some of my closest friends. I would never agree to what they believe. I mean, they believe chaotic, crazy things. But you know what? They know I love them and accept them.
Mm-hmm.
They know I listen to them and hear them. They know I validate them and acknowledge them for having those things. Not one of them has ever asked me, will you agree with me, please?
Right.
And I've sat with the richest people in the world and the poorest of poor. Nobody's ever said to me, will you agree with me? All they ask me is, would you be able to love and accept me? Will you be able to listen to me and hear me? Would you acknowledge and validate that this is what I believe?
Basic human needs of feeling significant, feeling that you're contributing to the world, feeling that you're making a difference, that you're being heard, whatever that may mean. As long as you feel like it's the emptiest thing is feeling that you have no purpose or meaning on the planet. And that's the constant search for everybody. And sometimes they find it in jobs and drugs and relationships. And I think probably what you've learned through your studies, or I try to in life, is that all of our happiness and everything is at our core within ourselves. And if that's solid and that's strong, and we're taking care of that temple, our body, our mind, our soul, then however you then apply that good energy to whatever task, family, work, whatever it may be, you'll be much more successful at it, I believe.
Yeah. I think it's so basic, we've forgotten how simple it all is.
It sounds simple when you talk about it, but
it is simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I want to do, and we can talk about this, I'll just hint at it, people can go on my website and see it, is I've started to work with people that are using AI, artificial intelligence, to help the human mind think smarter, faster, better, bolder. By bringing people by getting options and bringing people into a room and having a collective mind, having them, okay, let me try and give it, I can't talk about it without starting. People challenged them and said, I don't believe what you're doing is possible. They said, if you think that you can get people who disagree to think collectively, we want to challenge you, and we want to give you a challenge of having you pick the winners of the Kentucky Derby. And we want you to pick first, second, third, and fourth. They said, great, we don't know if it's going to work or not. They said, but just so the people who challenged them said, just so you know, the chances of winning are 586 to 1 odds against you. They said, fabulous, let's do it. They brought 40 people together that were horse enthusiasts. They weren't gamblers, they weren't horse owners, they weren't trainers, they weren't handicappers. They just liked, they said they liked to watch horse racing. They brought them together virtually in a room, in a virtual room. So they were all around the country. And in the room was an octagon. And on the corners of the octagon were 8 horses that were running in the Kentucky Derby. And they said to them, in a moment, we're going to activate your mouse so that your mouse will be able to be like a magnet, pulling a puck in the center towards the choice that you think when we ask you the question. But before that, we want you to make a list on your own scorecard. Who's going to come in first, second, third, fourth? We want you to write your own answers down. Don't tell it to us. They all did that. They said, okay, in a moment, we're going to activate your mouse to magnetize this puck in the center. Who's going to come in first? And they did that, all 40 of them. And you could see people pulling the puck, magnetizing it all around. But then collectively, they came to one answer. They did it again for second, third, and fourth. A $20 bet on what the 40 of them collectively decided produced an $11,000 reward.
Wow. Individually
on their own card, not one of them picked the horse that came in first to come in first. Not one of them picked the horse to come in second. One of the 40 picked the horse to come in third. And none of them picked the 4th place horse. So individually, they only got one right out of 160 choices. What they said is, can you see how collectively we think smarter than we do individually? Why do we continue to think that we can that self-help people can fix people that are broken? Why do we continue to think that government will lead us, that one mind from a vertical relationship will lead and teach and direct? What would happen if we came together collectively and tried to solve problems? So they work with businesses, and they're really good at predictive analysis. They get analysis better than experts in the field. And I went to them and I said, okay, that's great that you can tell what color a product should be, or you can win money through gambling. Why don't we try and solve world problems? What would happen if we asked the collective mind what problems they want to solve? Do they want to solve hunger, homelessness, global warming, sex trafficking, clean drinking water? Let's figure out what they want to solve. And let's ask them how they would solve it. And let's bring the swarm to those questions. And let's start to swarm those things. So I've started a little branch of what I'm doing called the Mosaic Swarm. There's a cost to be a part of it. The cost is $1. $1 a month. And the idea of $1 a month is that everybody can afford to do that. There will be places in far off regions where $1 a month is like $1 billion. And those people won't be able to. So we're going to ask the people that can afford it, would you be willing to sponsor someone who can't afford it and do $2 a month? If you're not, don't do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it also. There will be so many people that think you're crazy, you're stupid, you're a communist, you're a socialist, God knows what you're doing. Who the heck? I mean, these are stupid ideas. And I welcome them to hold those points of view. And I say, you're a part of the majority of 7 billion people. I'm looking for a minority of 1 billion. Mm-hmm. The minority of 1 billion people that say, this could work. The goal then will be to get 1 billion people to get involved with $1 a month, $1 billion a month, and ask the people, what problem do they want to solve? How do they think they will solve it? And then invest the $1 billion a month that they've contributed towards the solution of that problem. We may get it wrong the first 3 times, 4 times, 8 times. We may throw away $8, $10, $15 billion. But I guarantee you, we will be getting closer and closer because the collective mind will solve problems that we can't figure out on our own. Mm. And all you'll have lost is $3, $8, $15, $10. Mm-hmm. It's worth it for me to invest $10 and lose $10 to think that we could bring clean drinking water to Flint, Michigan, or to think that we
Sure.
could end homelessness, or to think that we could end poverty or hunger or sex trafficking or inequality of races and sexes. And so I have a place on my website, themosaiconline.com. There's a tab there called The Swarm. And for people that are interested or want to know more, you can see that. You can sign up there and you can contribute $1 a month. If we don't change what we're doing, we will continue to live in the world that we live in. And when I ask people to look out their window at the world that they see, is this the world you always dreamed of giving over to your children and your children's children? Most people say, no, it's not. Well, if it isn't the world that you dream of giving over to your children and your children's children, we've got to do something different. What are we willing to do? Maybe it's this. Maybe the idea I have is great. Maybe it's not. If it doesn't resonate, don't do it. The beauty of all this for me is in the writing of a simple story, in the writing of a fable, in the thought of Mo searching for heaven, going out on the streets and taking a walk and meeting different people. He didn't meet the rabbis and the shamans and the priests and the clergy. He met a trash man and a homeless man, a gardener, a waitress, a juice man. And he thought, why am I sitting with these people? What are they going to teach me about heaven? But what he realized is, in listening to their story, the person he now saw was completely different than the one he saw when he first came up and talked to them. And at that moment, he looked over and saw a monk who unzipped the sky and walked him through to a parallel reality where he met the wise one who was the keeper of the mosaic. And in essence, what the wise one said to him, but not in words, heaven is not a place with a guy with a beard better than mine, damning people or blessing people. It's that moment where our perspective changes, where we see something differently than we ever saw it before, where we see the world as a place of differences to a place where we focus on our similarities. That's what will bring us the heaven that we seek. A change of perception. A change of perception in our businesses, a change in perception in the way we treat our family, a change in perception in the way we see people on the street, a change in perception of the way our religions teach us to act. That change of perception will bring us to heaven, at least that I'm seeking.
Well, I love the entire concept behind it and the fact that you're actually contributing towards trying to do something about it, because some people might sit back and have this grand idea and say, well, it's just me, it's not going to really amount to anything, no one's going to do it, and dismiss that same idea 30 seconds after having the thought. So at least the energy of taking your positivity and goal of achieving this awesome task is that you're starting it. And maybe yours will take off, or maybe it'll inspire someone else. And the process of just thinking this way and everyone starting to do something about it is where the winds start to shift a little bit, I think.
Yeah, all of us, like when you think of a mosaic, you think of these broken pieces that come together to create something
beautiful. Yeah.
Right? All of us think, who am I? I'm just this little broken piece. What will my voice matter? But it's the coming together of all those pieces, broken or whole, big or small, shiny or dull, that we create something miraculous. We create something incredible. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole idea of everything that I'm about. I want to create this film that allows people to speak what they want to say so that we understand our collective voice will have us understand our one voice. And by doing all of us contributing together, $1 a month, it's not much. But $1 becomes $1 billion a month. And with $1 billion a month, what can't we do?
Normally I would, because there's so much like life advice and wisdom that you've already, dropped on us here. But I am trying to think of the different questions that would be going through some people when they hear really amazing ideas like this. And I think it might be something like, well, that's great, but you're a super positive person and you're very patient. And I don't have patience for dumb people and ignorance. And, if people think that way, I can't even give them the time of day to try to understand why they think, because it's so, whatever. And then they feel that resistance inside them, or it's anger, or it's whatever emotion you want to think. So through your studying and pursuing of these thoughts, I'm sure questions have popped in your own head or from others. What do you say to someone that encounters these principles and ideas and finds resistance within them, anger within them, dismisses it right away as like just a bunch of malarkey and just like a, just a super self-help kind of like, grand rainbow and kittens everywhere kind of world? Obviously, as a human being, you have your bad days and you have your tough moments, and I'm sure sometimes it's tough to get out of bed just like every other human. So what do you say to someone when they're listening to this and they're like, oh, it sounds nice in theory, but how do you overcome the resistance?
I don't try to. Like, that's why I say I'm looking for a minority of 1 billion. 7 billion people are going to listen to what I say and say, but you're a dreamer. You're how many unicorns do you ride to work every day? They're going to think I'm some sort of self. Everybody's entitled. The beauty of the life that I'm living right now is everybody's entitled to believe exactly what you believe. Like, I'm not asking you to believe anything different than you believe. I'm not asking you to try and come aboard the good ship Lollipop and ride with me into heaven. I'm asking you if you're unhappy with your life the way it is, if you're angry and in pain, if the way you're living is not giving you joy and prosperity and happiness that you want. If it's giving you all those things, continue living it. For God's sake, you're doing something great. Whatever it is, continue doing what's bringing you happiness, even until it doesn't bring you happiness anymore. In that moment where it doesn't bring you happiness, what do? I want you to know there's an alternative out there. If you're tired of just living in the grind, if you're tired of running the rat race, Alan Watts says it so beautifully. He said, we live our lives trying to impress other people that we have more than we have, doing things that we don't like to do, making more money so we can continue to do things we don't like to do, to impress people that we don't even know, who don't even give a damn about who we are. If that's the world you want to live in, so be it. I salute you. If you could be, I wish I could be happy in that world. It's an easier world to be happier in. There comes a place where you're no longer happy there, where you realize there's something more to life that you need to do, that you want to do, you want to contribute. You want to get beneath all the rat race of running to run, just to busy yourself, to keep going, to keep going, to keep going, to keep going, to occupy yourself in activity that doesn't get you anywhere. When people are ready, if you resonate with what I'm saying, come and be a part of it. If you don't resonate, throw it away. I mean, for God's sake, don't think about it a moment longer. There's nothing that I'm trying to convince anybody of. There's nothing that I want from anybody. I want to find those people who resonate with what I'm saying. Because here's the beauty of it. And Eric, I know you know this. If enough of us believe and start to practice, and if we bring a tide if we bring a tide in, every ship in the harbor is going to rise up. It doesn't matter if they're a part of us or not a part of us. And I don't care if you're like, I'm not doing this so that the people in the group will prosper and the people outside won't. I'm doing this because I hope that it will gain enough momentum that people who don't like it will say, hold it, something's happening here. There's a shift that's happening. I feel better, and I don't even know. Maybe it's these lunatics that are doing this thing. I don't know. But that their boat comes up too. Because the world that I see right now, left unchecked, not the world will fix itself. I'm not worried about the world. I'm worried about the people in the world. We've somehow got it into our belief system that you're different than me. And in order for me to feel secure, I have to be better than you. Because if you're different than me and I'm not better than you, then am I worse than you?
Mm.
And so there's this fight of putting each other down and finding fault and disagreement. It's a waste of time. We're part of each other. We're connected. We're part of one reality. And that reality is going to create for us the reality that we creates.
Mm-hmm.
Why not at least give a chance to bringing into the world the reality that you see in your mind? Why not try to create it? I mean, it may not work. It might work and I might be dead 100 years before it works. Doesn't matter. We plant the seeds.
Right. So I think what I'm getting from that is that you're not going to, you're not trying to, knock on doors and convert people. You know what I mean? It's not a missionary kind of a thing. It's
God,
when people find it within themselves. If they feel something internally, but they're not quite sure where that direction is, at least you're saying like, hey, there's a nice idea over here. And if that works for you, that's great. What I'm also teaching you is that if it's not for you, that I also accept that. And
100%.
that probably is the deeper concept out of everything that you said that I'm getting out of it, is that even when coming across people that don't buy into everything that you say, still learn to love and respect the fact that they're doing what is best for them in their life. And if they want something different, then they'll be able to seek it. But if not, it's okay that they're not doing it the same way we are.
And I support them in doing it the way they want to do it. That more than it's okay, it's that I support them, because
Right.
really what I'm asking people to do is learn to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to listen to their own voice. Learn to listen to each other, because when we speak, we learn nothing. When we listen, we have the opportunity to learn everything. We already know what we're going to say. We say it so many times, we memorized it. When we listen, we have no idea what's coming.
Right.
Don't listen to me. Listen to the world. Listen to everybody. Listen to yourself, for God's sake.
Right. You could learn something from everybody.
Everybody.
I take this the same thing. Not to interrupt you, I apologize. But as a martial arts instructor, just going specific into like something I know well about, you'd think that you'd reach a level of dedicating your life to it, and that it's only your job to teach others. But I learn back from brand new students, from white belts, from children, because people have different thoughts, different questions. They ask something in a way that makes you go like, "Wow, I never really even thought of answering that question."
Yes.
And the fact that they're making my mind try to communicate it to them, sometimes I've had moments of teaching the same thing for 20 years going like, why did I never think about it and show it this way? And it changes my entire direction just because of that different approach. And I think if you're opened to learning from everyone, and don't put yourself in a bubble thinking that you know it all, and are you too good, or you too above people, you could learn from everybody. Even if it's something that you see that's nasty or dark in them, you could learn like, well, that's a ugly type of thought and behavior. So what I'm learning is like, I don't want to be that kind of person. I never really thought about it before, but I look at them and I don't want that. So there you go. I just learned something about myself,
And even to go a little step further, taking my daughter's example, the only reason they're doing something ugly is because someone hasn't listened to them when they tried to do something kind. And to be able to have the patience to sit and say to them, you don't have to be ugly with me, brother or sister.
Mm.
Like, I want to know what it is you truly want to say.
Right.
And I understand if you don't have the courage to say it to me, because why would you? Because you've been hurt so often by people who have tried to reach out to you.
Mm.
But I want you to know, you don't have to tell me now. Here's my email. Here's my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Call me, write me, right? Because we need an opportunity. If we don't feel heard and listened to and accepted, if we don't feel like we can say what we want to say, what chance do we have of connecting with anything?
Mm-hmm.
What chance do we have of having real intimacy? It's really my silo connects to your silo. That's all that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hiding behind my walls of protection, and my walls of protection are telling your walls of protection hi. It's a pretty bow tie and a nice shade of lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, there isn't real connection. There isn't intimacy. There isn't into me see. Because I don't trust you enough. Or you don't trust me enough. So how do we turn that around? Do we have any desire to? If you have no desire to, continue doing what you're doing. I have a desire to. So in the people that I meet, I want them to know I'm holding the space for you.
Right.
Because what I've watched is when I hold the space for people to empty out all the stuff that gets in the way of saying what they really want, lives change, things happen, miracles happen that they never thought could even happen. Because all this stuff, I was going to say another word, all this stuff that clogs them up is gone. And the compassion of doing that for me is that if I can give you one moment where you're actually able to feel your life and who you are as a person without all this stuff that gets in your way of being who you are and what you are as a person, you can take it back. I'm not taking it away. In my book, that character is called the trash man. So he does hold the trash can there, and he does say, if you want me to take it, I can put it in the truck, but I come back every week. I can come back next week and get it if you want, or next year. You don't have to give it away and throw it away, but take a moment to experience yourself without all your problems, without all your stress, without all the things that make you angry, without all the things that make you separate from us. What would you feel like? Who would you be if you could actually be yourself for one moment?
I love it. Man, I could honestly talk to you all day. Honestly,
Also, I love you, brother.
There's just so much great life philosophy and information that's there. If people want to dig a little bit deeper and follow your mission and your story online, or find your book, where would be some of the best places for them to find you and connect with you a little bit more?
We're going to put that in the show notes, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
DanielBruceLevin.com is one website I have. TheMosaicOnline.com is another website. My book, The Mosaic, is available on Amazon. I would love for people to read it. It's a starting point. It's a simple fable. You can read it in a sitting. It will take. But the beauty of a book, this I didn't even realize. And I worked in publishing for 10 years at Hay House. I helped them grow from $3 million to $100 million a year in sales. A beauty of the book is not only in the words of the story or in the words of what the book says. It's actually in the spaces between those words that allows us to understand what those words mean for ourselves and what the story means to us and what the words, how we bring ourselves into that story or into that teaching. So when you read it, enjoy the words. It'll occupy your mind. Even in this conversation, what I try and do with people is I try and occupy the mind with interesting things to say. Mm-hmm. But if people are really listening, what they'll feel is a resonance in my voice and a transmission in what I'm trying to do that actually touches your heart and your soul. And if you feel that, that means congratulate yourself. Because that means we've occupied your mind. I don't occupy Wall Street. I occupy Mind Street.
Right.
So that your mind doesn't get in the way and go, whoa, 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 what's going on here? I don't want to feel that. Right? If I can occupy your mind with enough interesting conversation that we can sit and just love each other and feel each other and communicate and really be with each other without the interruption of the mind for an hour.
Energy felt and received, which is why I love this opportunity to virtually connect with someone that if it weren't for this venue of a podcast, our paths may never have crossed. And it's nice to just meet people that have such interesting life experiences and then choose to not hold it to themselves, but share it with others. And then also admit that you're still learning and growing. And totally. It's not really an end position. It's a constant quest to, in this particular metaphor, parallel to become a black belt in life. Because even on the mats, black belt originally you think is the end all be all of perfection. And then when you get there, it's like, well, I've just laid a very nice foundation for myself that I will continue to build upon. So I'll tell students that if you imagine yourself underground, you're the white belt. And as you're climbing the rank to black belt, when you hit black belt, you actually just popped your head out of the surface and now you're standing on the ground.
Wow.
And it's that point forward that you're actually climbing up. You're not starting on the ground and going up from there. So it's a constant life study. It's a constant pursuit of excellence for yourself. For me, which I'm sure your studies and yoga and the monastery, all these different things you experienced was for you. Martial arts was kind of like that spiritual muse for me connecting with myself and others as well. So although different paths, I understand the messaging and the energy that you put out there, and I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
it's my honor, and what a great job you do, and what a great space you hold for people like myself to be able to come on and open up and share. And I really want to compliment you and salute you in that. And I know from our conversation in the green room, this will not be our last conversation.
Yes, sir.
And
Well,
I hope to God that's true.
I agree, and I know definitely we'll have our contact information shared. And without a doubt, I hope that this episode resonates with a lot of people and helps us to spread your message, and they connect with you and try to get one person at a time to help influence this planet for the better. And I really appreciate again the time and the stories. I'm sure there's many more. But for this brief time, there's a lot of area that we covered, a lot of information shared, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on the show. Um,
You're,
and I recommend everyone obviously to check out the show notes, and I'll list easy ways to connect with Danny and follow him. And if it's something that interests you, figure out how you could help participate and help share the message. So a final thank you, sir, for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, today's Life's Black Belt, Mr. Danny Levin.